All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I am Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, as we count down into what are becoming these are kind of the dog days of summer for you and for us, right?
Yeah. Well, these are the good days of summer, Adam, because they haven't come back yet. So these are the good days. The dog days are when they do get back to Fisher and we're working every day. So no, I'm still in the good days of summer here.
Counting down to the 29th. And,
yes.
Let's not rush the arrival of that for obvious reasons. But there are some prevalent issues with this team as they are once again Super Bowl contenders. And like a lot of people questioning, I'll do this now anyway, FanDuel, presenting sponsor for this show and others on the Believe network of podcasts, has the Bills at plus 1,100, and that's tied with the Baltimore Ravens. LA Rams, your Super Bowl favorite, at plus 550. Ravens plus 1,100. Buffalo Bills plus 1,100. And Seattle Seahawks right behind them at plus 1,200. So that's kind of your preseason look as far as Vegas is concerned. And I think there's like a lot of debate, are the Bills worthy of those expectations, right? And that's something we've discussed here on the show. And I think that's a legitimate question. So what I want to do here this week, let's focus on the key issues on the offensive side of the football heading into training camp. Next week, we'll do defense. And then on the 29th, it'll be here and we can get in actually to the nitty-gritty and what's actually happening on the field at St. John Fisher. So offensive side, they obviously did a great deal, Sal, to preserve the production and everything, and justifiably so, in what they've seen in keeping Joe Brady, elevating him from offensive coordinator to head coach. Good relationship with Josh Allen. But I guess I'm wondering a lot, how might the offense, what might we see differently now that Sean McDermott is out of the picture? He doesn't have like any fingerprints on the game plan whatsoever. Brady has the full-time CEO responsibilities of being a head coach, and obviously Allen is the constant that keeps the Bills in the very conversation in terms of being a legitimate Super Bowl favorite that they are pretty much annually now, given he is at his absolute prime at this point. So how do you see things with the dynamic changing on the offensive side of the ball from the top down, from Brady down?
Yeah, look, I mean, we've talked about this numerous times. This team didn't need a complete blow up and reset, which I think is in large part how Brady got this promotion to head coach, right? They could have gone outside the organization and upended the whole thing, and a new head coach from outside might have done some tweaking to the offensive side of the ball, would have brought his own coordinator in or whatever it would have been. The Bills didn't do that, and it's probably good that they didn't, because this offense, for all the things that we complain about sometimes, it was still one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL last season. There's still a lot of good and a lot to like about what the Bills have, even with a mundane receiving core. They averaged whatever it was, 30 points a game last year. So it didn't need the full blow up. It'll be interesting to see. And we really don't know yet, Adam, how much McDermott was, quote unquote, holding Brady back. Again, I point to, look at the numbers. I mean, how much was Sean holding them back if they're averaging 30 points for about the last 5 years in a row? People want to say, oh, he wanted to just run the ball and play defense. That's malarkey. Look at Josh's numbers. They didn't just run the ball. They threw the ball a lot. Now, will Brady be a little more aggressive? I don't know. I mean, I think you and I both got tired of the Joe Brady screen passes last year and the lack of a true downfield passing game. And of course, we've talked about the reasons, why that wasn't. They didn't have a great receiver, and they didn't have Dalton Kincaid really healthy all year. So I think if those things come into play, you add DJ Moore and a healthy Kincaid, that should help the downfield passing game. And then we'll see what Brady does. But I don't think we're going to walk into this year, Adam, and just because Sean McDermott's gone, Brady's going to throw the ball, 70 times a game. I don't think that's going to happen at all.
Right. Okay. So I want to talk about DJ Moore, obviously. Kincaid we're going to get to because he's more of a specific topic. He deserves a little bit more depth given his importance to the offense, what he's been through and what they need him to get to. Right. But let's get into the run the ball philosophy, which has been so successful. You've got a rushing champion coming back now in James Cook, right? How much of a concern, let's talk about workload for him. because it's obvious it's so vital to what the Bills do offensively and sets up so much. But where does the workload start to factor in there? What's sort of the right number for him, or the right area, the neighborhood for him, and what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, he took a big jump forward last year. He had 309 carries, and then he had whatever it was, 30-some pass receptions, so close to 350 touches. That's a lot of work for a guy who's not that big. You remember, James Cook he's not Derrick Henry, so he's not built to take the amount of punishment. He's generally pretty good at avoiding the big hit, like the great runners are, right? The great runners, Barry Sanders, Thurman Thomas, they all found a way to avoid the big hit, and he does a good job of that. But he really took a big step, a big jump in touches last year. And you wonder, they've still got him for, what does he have, 3 more years left? I think it was a 4-year extension. Does that start this year? I mean, that might even start this year.
I think it starts this year.
They've got him under contract for 4 years. He's got some mileage on his tires. So you've got guys like Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, who they've worked in the past. I think last year they really went away from Ray Davis. I mean, his production went way down because they leaned more on Cook. I think you might see a little bit more of an even balance. Now, obviously, Cook's going to get 70% of the touches, but it would behoove the Bills to maybe get Ray Davis involved a little bit more on the early downs, and then Ty Johnson, we've seen, has been a third down back for them. I think the one thing, Adam, that I'm going to look for in this passing game, now that Brady is completely in charge of the show, I would like to see them get the running backs a little bit more involved in the passing game. We've seen that Ty Johnson can catch the ball out of the backfield, and we've seen James Cook do it too. And I've always said, I think James Cook could do more of that. Take some of the running carries away and use the quote unquote long handoff, right? The short pass to the bat. I'd like to see them try a little bit more of that, as opposed to the, behind the line of scrimmage screen to Khalil Shakir and hope he can make a guy miss. I would like to see more of that with James Cook. But to your point, the workload was heavy, and I don't know if they can keep doing that year after year after year with him.
All right. But it does set up so much of what they do through the air, right? Which makes them so difficult to defend, particularly when they're kind of hitting on all cylinders, right? So they have upgraded the passing game. The biggest move from Brandon Beane this offseason was the trade for DJ Moore. And that continues to be particularly, it was a big subject of debate, obviously, at the time. And I'm hearing more and more discussion about it right now, as he's obviously an upgrade for the receiving core, but is he the true dynamic that they've lacked? He's not, right? Yeah. He's a very, very good wide receiver and should be their leading target. He and Shakir, obviously, his production, but in terms of, more of the downfield and what he brings, but he's not that true burner, right? So, and there's questions about him against man coverage. I've heard a lot of that discussion pop up, right? In other words, is he a true separator, that type? He's no doubt a top quality type guy, but does he bring that element that they need to the passing game? And I think that's one of the biggest questions facing the offensive side of the football as we head into the training camp into the season.
Yeah, you're right. He's not a burner, but he's a guy, Adam. He knows what he's doing. I mean, this is going to be his 9th year, same as Josh Allen, same draft class. This is a guy who's had big production throughout his career. Took a dip back. Last year was his worst year as a pro, and there were reasons for that. Caleb Williams, was not the most accurate quarterback, and the Bears worked in their young receivers, Adunze and Luther Burden, plus the tight ends that emerged for them. He really seeded some targets and some snaps because of that, because they just had better players that were available to them for the first time. So that's where his numbers dropped a little bit, but I think he could come to Buffalo. Now, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Buffalo too. There are, but I think he comes to this team, Adam, as the number one receiver. He's the guy they haven't had since Stephon Diggs. And I'm not going to say he's Stephon Diggs, but he's a pretty good facsimile of Diggs and what he can do. So I'm expecting him to have a pretty good impact on this team for sure. He's, like I said, he walks in as the best receiver. He's age 29, so it's crazy for people to expect that he's going to change the dynamic the way Diggs did when Diggs came here as whatever, he was a 26-year-old at the time. That's probably not going to happen, but I think DJ Moore will help Josh Allen in a big way, I believe.
That's certainly the hope, and he's definitely going to help Allen and the football team, right? When you've got the balance of the run game that they have. I mean, there's so much to like about this offense that carries over, obviously. And it's natural to question, whether Moore brings the entire skill set and the range they need, but he's certainly an upgrade, and it's a positive, extraordinarily positive addition. I think what they've lacked when we've got a high pick at tight end, right, in Dalton Kincaid, who has not fully realized his impact and potential for this football team. All right.
No,
if he does that, right, imagine if Kincaid does that, and you brought him up at the beginning of the show here. If you get a healthy, productive Kincaid now in the mix with some of the other elements we're talking about, and Brady in complete control of the offense, right, without any remnant, McDermott, conservative, whatever that element was, right, that's out. All of a sudden, think of how key a productive, healthy Dalton Kincaid is and could be for this offense. You factor that into the equation, and I think we're starting to have a different conversation, aren't we?
Yeah. Adam, you could make the case that the bigger addition this year might be a healthy Dalton Kincaid, even more than DJ Moore. I mean, they're all going to be working together and they're going to help each other. But I think if you can get Kincaid back to being the player they believe they were getting in the first round. And if you remember that first year, he set a Bills tight end reception record. They didn't go for a lot of yards. That came more in the start of the second season. They started getting him downfield more. That was one of the complaints I had that first year. Oh, it was great that he caught 73, but geez, he averaged 8 yards a carry or a reception. It wasn't the impact you were hoping for. We started to see that in the first half of 24, and then the injury hit. The knee injury happened, and he just hasn't been the same player since. Then he mixed in, he had hamstring and oblique injuries last season that he dealt with. So it's really been a year and a half of just no health. We started to see what Kincaid can be in that playoff game against Denver. He had I think he caught, I want to say it was 6 for 83, and he might have scored a touchdown in that game. I mean, that's the kind of player that I think the Bills always believed that he could be. If he truly is healthy, think about what these tight ends in this league do, Adam, how important a good tight end is in the NFL. That could be what Dalton Kincaid can bring to the team, what he really hasn't brought. And I think if he is healthy, Adam, I think you're going to see, everyone talks about the 3 wides. I think you're going to see a lot of 2 tight end, because I know they like to keep Knox on the field. He does a lot of different things pretty well. And Kincaid would probably almost be like the 3rd wide receiver in those sets. I think if he's ready to go, I think you're going to see a lot more of him than you would, say, Josh Palmer or Keon Coleman.
How confident, and I think most Bills fans would ask this question, and I don't know the answer to it, and I don't imagine you do either, but it's important to bring this up in context, I think, right? How confident are you that he can be that player, and meaning that he can stay? He's got the skill set, but durability becomes a very legitimate question. You see a lot of players through the course of their career, that becomes an issue. Josh Allen is on the extreme end of that with his durability and what it's done for him, right? Kincaid legitimately faces those questions. I mean, I think it's become a trend, right? So at what point can you expect something different, and how legitimate is that concern at this point in his career?
Yeah, you're right. We don't know what the point is because we haven't seen it. His first year, I think he stayed mostly healthy his first year. If I recall, there was nothing that, the nicks and bruises, but I think he played the whole year and he was good. It started in that second season. And as I said, it wasn't just the knee. He had the oblique. I think he even had, there was 1 week, I think I think he played, but he might've been in concussion protocol. So he's had several different things. And that's exactly right, Adam. When is the point where it's finally going to turn for him? Now, he talked at the end of OTAs, and he was all off about how I feel great. This is the best I've felt at this time of the season, maybe since I've been in the NFL. He didn't have the surgery. He could have had knee surgery, and they chose to not do it. Him and the doctors, the consultation was that we don't think you need it. We're going to take the non-surgery course. So he should be coming to camp ready to roll, and you just have to hope that he can get through without an injury. And we'll see. And they've given him the 5th-year option, so he's going to be here for the next 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, they'll have a decision to make. And if he has not gotten past these injury issues, he's probably going to be in his last 2 years with the team.
We had Tyler Dunn on a couple of weeks back. Really good show because he had talked to both Brady and Josh Allen sort of one-on-one. And I want to get, I'm kind of bringing that up, and because we've crossed some of this terrain earlier, but I think it bears repeating here, like the weight of expectation, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder how that impacts Brady, and this is first year as an NFL head coach, right? This is on top of, this kind of permeates everything we've talked about. You know, I think he's good. Like, I think Carmichael is a great addition to kind of help him and be his eye in the sky, so to speak, and you know, complement him in dealing with the offense. But from a CEO perspective, what he faces, where we gave the odds at the top of the program, there isn't much downside. In other words, if they don't get to, if they lose in the divisional round, I mean, a lot depends on what we see during the course of the year and injuries and all of that. But if they're relatively healthy and they fall short in the postseason, I mean, there isn't much downside for Joe Brady.
No, we've talked about this. It's rare that a first-time head coach steps into a situation like this, where he's handed the keys to a nice big old BMW here. I mean, they're expected to go win in his first year. He doesn't have the leeway of, okay, I'm joining a bad team, I've got to rebuild this from the ground up. No, the foundation's there and several walls are already up and on the building. He's ready to put the roof on now. So there's going to be no wiggle room for Joe Brady. I think the Bills understand that. I'm not saying it's going to be a one and done. You don't get to the Super Bowl, you're fired. That's not what I'm saying. But there's pressure to win. Now, look, there's pressure to win for every coach in the league because their positions are so tenuous, right? Aaron Glenn's going into year 2 with the Jets after a complete disaster his first season. He's got much more coaching experience than Joe Brady did, just given their age. He has to win this year, even with a bad team, or they're going to start talking about getting rid of him. So Brady's got some pressure on him. There's no doubt, and he can't fall flat in the wild card or divisional round. They need to go another step and hopefully 2 to get to where they need to be.
As we look at the offensive side of the ball, before we wrap this up, there's one other area, but it ties to Brady and his approach, right? I mean, he has been so outspoken in his support of Keon Coleman, right? I mean, really, to the point where if this goes south, it becomes questionable, right? What are your expectations? That's another kind of X factor that we don't know. But you see blurbs about Coleman and his mindset and how the outside noise, the critics don't stand in his way and all of that. You would hope, and from the disaster of the Pagula press conference and everything with Brandon Beane at the end of the season and calling that whole draft into question and calling all the things that he's faced. I mean, if ever there was a Bunsen burner to light it under a guy, it's been this. He's going to have the opportunity. Brady has fully backed him, as you would expect that he would. Maybe not to the extent that he has, because he's left himself kind of a very little bit of a wiggle room in terms of what to do. But Coleman's going to be there and have this opportunity. I don't know. Are you? I'm not really banking on him for much of anything, because I don't think he's shown that they can truly rely until he shows it within the crucible of the regular season. I don't know that I expect much from Coleman at this point.
No, I mean, look, we heard the same things last year, Adam. If you remember, after the rookie season, the McDermott press conference where, we didn't think he came back very well from the injury, and he had a great offseason. Everything was wonderful. He had the big fourth quarter in the first game of the year against the Ravens, and then what happened? He just kind of disappeared. So this is 2 years now where he is underwhelmed. It's funny we bring this up. I was just on the radio here in Rochester an hour and a half ago, and Coleman's name came up. And I said, I feel a little bit bad for him in that I still believe the Bills overdrafted him. I don't think he was worth – they were so desperate for a wide receiver that year. They didn't get the guy they wanted in the first round, so they kept trading back, and they finally settled on Keon with the first pick of the second round. I still think he was overdrafted. I don't think he was that good to be drafted that high. So he's had these probably undue expectations that have been placed on him because of where he was drafted, which wasn't his fault. But what has been his fault is the way he's conducted himself during the first 2 years. Immaturity, missing meetings, really not being an impact player. Only a few times has he really been that guy. So it's on him too. So in this year 3, it's just like the Kincaid situation. I don't know what to expect because Kincaid hasn't proven he can stay healthy, and Keon has not proven that he could be a consistent performer in the NFL. So he's going to get another opportunity here. He's fighting a little harder this season. They've brought in DJ Moore. Josh Palmer, I hope, can bounce back from a completely lost first year. You go back to last year, Adam, we were high on that acquisition, right? I thought that was going to be a good add for the Bills offense, and it went to hell because he got hurt. They drafted Skylar Bell, who I don't think will be, part of the mix too much as a rookie, but he's competition for Keon Coleman. So it's on Keon this summer to take a step forward and really prove that he can be a reliable guy in the offense.
Well, you mentioned the word consistency. Certainly the Bills have seen that at the offensive line position, right? Now left guard, here's your final piece of the puzzle that they have to kind of find what fits. The competition at left guard, I mean, that's going to be something. It's not glamorous, but that's going to be something that needs to be a focal point for media coverage during the course of camp because it's vital.
Yeah. I mean, look, I still say one of the biggest moves that Beane made in the offseason was getting one of those guys back. And he got Connor McGovern back, but he couldn't get them both. So David Edwards left. And I do believe that was the right move, too. If you had to bring one of them back, I was fully on board with McGovern as the center was the more important player. Even though he got less money in the market, he's still the more important player. So you've got this vacant left guard job. Alec Anderson's been, he's a fun guy, great to talk to, love his attitude, but he hasn't played a whole lot. He's been a spot starter because of injuries a couple times. Okay. Now Austin Corbett came in and he's got a track record. He's been in the league, I think, since 2018, won a Super Bowl with the Rams. The issue with him is his last 3 years pretty much. Well, I shouldn't say that. He got hurt in the last game of 23. So 24, 25 have kind of been his rough years for injuries. I talked to him in the spring, and he feels like he's fully past it all. He's excited. I think that's the guy that I'm looking at to win the job because of his track record. He's got a lot of NFL starts. So you hope he stays healthy, and you hope that he just outplays Alec Anderson, because I think they'd be a little bit better off with him. But it's going to be a competition, and there really isn't many other guys to throw in there, Adam. You look at their depth chart, it's between those two. There's nobody else that you're even going to look at for that position. So that'll be a good one to watch for sure.
Well, you know what it needs? It needs an experienced set of eyes and ears covering it. And one thing I know about you, despite your effervescent personality, you have you have all the elements to just break this down.
I do.
And bring us the vital points, which we're going to, again, rely on here and believe in Bills. It's coming sooner than we probably want it to from a media perspective. Fans get pissed off when media says stuff like that. I think they understand, though. I mean, that summer's short. So enjoy the rest of it, man, because before you know it, we're going to be right back in the trenches. And we'll have coverage for you here on Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. How much vacation time do you have left? I mean, how are you going to allocate the time that remains?
Yeah, I've still got 3 or 4 weeks that I can technically take. So I'll intersperse it in there a little bit. I'll get it all in. But look, I've already started my preview stuff this week, so I'm getting my head back into it. It's been a nice little break, but you got to get your head back into it because it comes up quick, man.
Yeah,
I mean, fans have been missing football since the Super Bowl ended. We don't miss football. I don't miss it at all. It's the job, and I like being away from it, but it is time to get going. So here we are, and we're going to get going.
Yeah, you can't wait till the 29th, right? Nope. I've made that mistake much earlier in my career where I just kind of, was milking summer for all of it was worth, all that it was worth. Just kind of showed up there on move-in day, back when they used to have that. And, you can't. You need to be kind of doing the mental training and kind of delving into all of this and really figuring out your angles like now.
Yep.
So it's actually doubles down. I mean, it's beneficial to have this show in advance of what we're doing, which is kind of what the coverage is going to be to help fans who don't follow it quite as closely inside the key issues. This has been the offensive portion of our training camp preview. Next up next week, defense, and then we're off and running on the 29th at St. John Fisher. All right, man. Enjoy.
All
We'll
right.
talk to you next week. For Sal Maiorana, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, I'm Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV. Sports Talk Live, Buffalo, which, by the way, is on hiatus for the summer. It will come back in the fall, week 1 on Channel 2. So for Sal, I'm Adam. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel.